I grew up in a small brick house on Pine Street in Phoenix, and the house knew our noise and our quiet. The porch leaned a little to the left, the front door stuck in July, and the kitchen window caught every orange sunset. My mom, Laura, kept glass bowls on tables so light could scatter like coins. My brother, Michael, treated every day like a free sample. His wife, Sophia, floated on dreams of white sheets and tall hotels. I was the one who fixed things, paid bills on time, and trusted the steady breath of engines more than the rise and fall of voices. The morning it happened, the heat rose off the driveway before breakfast. I poured coffee into a chipped blue mug, wrote a fuel estimate on a notepad, and walked to the garage. My gray locker is plain, with a code that lives in my fingers. Inside are my logbooks, my headset, and the golden credit card that carries fuel and repairs until clients pay. I opened the door and stared at the space where the card should be. For a heartbeat, I thought I had moved it. Then the truth settled like a stone dropped in a well. My hands went cold, but my breath stayed steady. I logged into the account and watched the charges bloom across the screen. $12,800 to a Las Vegas resort. $3,500 for clothes in Los Angeles. £2,000 for romance extras that sounded like roses and bad math. I called Michael. He answered on the second ring with a smile in his voice and said, "My sister is our bank, which we use whenever we want." He said it like a line from a sitcom that never ends. Sophia laughed nearby. I stared at the old wall map in my office, the one with America in bold letters and Europe in the corner, like a pale echo. Rage came and went like a hot wind, and then something quieter took its place. I am a pilot. The jet they had booked for their dream ride was mine, title and tail number and annual inspection. Years of dawn flights and dusk landings live in that plane like a quiet savings account. I keep the charter listing open under a company name because it is useful, and sometimes I fly the plane myself when the schedule is light. I drove to the private field outside Phoenix with the windows down and the radio off. The hangar door rolled like a slow wave. My jet waited, white and patient, its nose pointed toward the wide blue morning. I set my palm on the fuselage and felt calm return like an old friend. Pre-flight is the way I pray. Fuel, oil, hydraulics, avionics, flaps, lights, cabin, doors. I touched, checked, and called each item in order. The world narrowed to switches and gauges that do not lie. I stocked the galley with cold water and soft blankets because care is a habit, even when I am angry. I added extra supplies I had picked up at dawn. Hard jugs of water, protein bars, tins, and a sack of rice. You do not add weight without a reason. I had one. I called my friend Daniel in Denver for a weather check. He asked if I was fine. I said yes and meant it. They arrived late, sun-drunk and sure. Michael wore a shirt loud enough to scare birds. Sophia wore a silk scarf and sunglasses like dark moons. Mom did not come, but she sent a text. Family first. Thank you, with a heart. The words felt thin. I tucked the phone away, kept my cap low and my mouth still, and greeted them like any pilot would. They did not look twice. They never do. We walked over the warm tarmac, climbed the steps, and settled in. I closed the cabin door and let the world outside fall quiet. We lifted in a smooth climb, Phoenix spreading below in squares and lines. The jet purred, and the sky opened the way a well-kept promise opens. I leveled off and turned west, then south, then east, sketching long arcs over open land so no one would guess where we were going. Sophia clapped when a river cut through rock like a silver thread. Michael raised a glass and bragged about how far their money would go, and I felt a small, bitter laugh rise in my chest. I checked my instruments. I checked the extra water again. I checked the line inside me that separates kindness from surrender. By noon, the sun was a white coin, bright and heavy. The ground below turned to tan and red and quiet. I tuned a frequency I had not used in years, a number that belongs to a place the world forgets. The answer came backboard and shore. Runway open, wind light, proceed as planned. I stared straight ahead and thought about the little brick house, the chipped mug, the gray locker, the missing card, and every time I had been told that love meant paying and staying silent. I set my course. I did not shake. I was done being a wallet with wings. I leaned into the horizon and let the engines speak for me, a clear promise that the next chapter would belong to me alone. I repositioned the jet on a short hop and set down at a quiet strip outside Las Vegas, a place where the sagebrush keeps its own counsel and the tower talks in a soft voice. Daniel texted, "You okay?" I looked out at the pale hills and the hot shine of the ramp and typed back, "I'm good." I was calm the way the sky gets after sunrise. I paid the fueler $2,900 from my backup account and signed for a small landing fee of $120. The clerk slid receipts across the counter like playing cards. I kept my face level and my words short. The golden card was still missing from my locker, but I had other ways to keep my plane ready. A pilot always plans for the thing that should not happen. Pre-flight steadied me. Fuel caps are tight. Oil in the green. Tires are clean and firm. Lights bright. Avionics clear. I checked the emergency kit and then added what I had bought at dawn. Big plastic jugs of water, protein bars, rice, beans, dried fruit, a compact stove, and a long roll of thin cloth that could make a shade. I stacked them behind the last row and strapped them down so they would not rattle. I told myself again, this is not to harm them. This is to teach them. I thought of our brick house back in Phoenix, the porch that leans to the left, and how many times I had walked through its stuck door with heavy bags and a quiet mind. I love that house because it holds history, but I would not let it keep me small. Michael and Sophia arrived late and loud, with sunglasses and bright smiles that bounced off the metal. Michael raised his phone to film the jet as if he had bought it with pocket change. Sophia took a selfie in the wing's reflection. "Our America tour," she said, like a slogan. I greeted them in a crisp tone I save for strangers. They did not look at my face long enough to know me. That has always been the trick. People see the plane and forget to see the pilot. Mom did not come. Instead, she sent a short line. "Make this special for them." I put the phone away. What I would make special today is a lesson in value. Not price, value. The difference is what people learn when the desert talks. We rolled, lifted, and climbed into a clear blue that felt endless. Las Vegas dropped behind us, a scatter of glass and angles shrinking into sun haze. I set a heading south for a while, then bent east, easing the jet across empty land. From the cabin, Sophia laughed and asked if we were headed to a beach. Michael clinked ice and said a beach anywhere would do, as long as the drinks were cold and the bills went on the family card. He said it in that sweet, sour voice that had grown inside him when money felt like rain. I said nothing. I watched the needles and the numbers that never lie. Wind light. Fuel steady. Temp smooth. The autopilot held our line. I held the rest. On my lap, an old chart lay folded to a faded square that showed what I needed. A forgotten runway in a dry bowl, a dirt gray line set back from any house or road. I had used it years ago for training, then marked it in pencil, and never told anyone. In America, there are places where the land is wide and the clock is slow. That runway was one. I radioed a flight service station and spoke with a calm voice I had learned from older pilots, men like Walt, women like Grace, people who taught me to trade fear for steps. Daniel sent another text that blinked on my screen. "Weather clean. You are clear." I answered with a thumb press and a breath I did not know I was holding. When the ground below shifted from tan to a deeper red, I began the slow work of arrival. Descent checklist. Seatbelt sign. Fuel balance. Cabin pressurization. I checked the supplies again and pictured how I would place them on the dirt so the sun would not spoil them. I thought about money in a new way. Not the 2,000 pounds that Sophia had splashed on romance extras, not the $12,800 Michael had poured into a room with a view, but the quiet cost of water when you must carry it, the price of shade at noon when the sky is a white coin. In the cabin, Michael bragged about a friend in New York and a weekend in Miami, and I let the words pass like air through a vent. The desert does not care how you dress your pride. I flew a low pass to read the strip. Cracks like spider lines, a tuft of dry grass at midfield, a wind that slid across from the right with a small push. Nothing moved on the edges. No house. No car. No shade except a rusted pole that once held a light. I turned wide, set flaps, trimmed nose up, and talked myself through it the way I always do. Aim.
Rate. Picture.
Hold. The wheels kissed, the dust rose, and the jet rolled along with a dusty shudder that shook loose a few old thoughts. I let it slow, eased the brakes, and turned onto the side where a patch of ground lay flat and firm. I powered down until the engine spun to a soft ticking silence. Heat pressed in. The air outside looked like glass about to bend. When the last fan blade stopped, the world felt strange and close, as if time had stepped into the cabin to listen. I checked the doors, checked the jugs, and looked at the two people who had used my card as if it were a river that never ran dry. Michael stretched and smiled. Sophia reached for her scarf. I stood, smoothed my jacket, and felt the pilot in me take the captain's chair in my chest. There's a kind of love that buys and buys until it empties you. I had carried that weight for years. Today I set it down. I opened the cabin door. Heat leapt up the steps. "Welcome," I said in an even voice, and the word had more edges than they knew. Outside, the runway waited, old and cracked, far from any house or town. This was still America, still my sky, and the lesson I had chosen had just begun. Michael and Sophia bounced down the steps like kids at a fair. "We made it," Sophia said, shading her eyes with her hand. The heat rose off the ground in bright waves. No hotel, no pool, no people. Only a deserted desert, flat and wide, with wind that scraped the sand and made a low hiss. They turned, confused, smiles falling. I stood inside the cabin and pulled the handle. The jet door slid shut with a clean click that sounded louder than the engines ever had. Their faces changed at once. They were not travelers anymore. There were two people standing in a place that did not care about charm. I spoke through the small side window, my voice steady. "There is food and water outside. A lot. You will live. You will learn." I pointed to the stacks I had placed under the wing. Big plastic jugs, boxes of bars and tins, a roll of thin cloth for shade, and a small stove. Michael shouted my name and reached for the handle. He pounded once, twice. Sophia called, soft at first, then sharp. I did not open the door. I started the engines. The sound grew and filled the empty field. Dust lifted around the tires like smoke. I gave them one last look to fix them in my mind, then rolled forward, turned, and took off, the runway sliding away under me as if it were a ribbon being pulled by an unseen hand. When the jet climbed, the desert turned into a hard quilt of red and tan. I felt my anger cool in the clean air. I thought of our small brick house in Phoenix, the stuck door, the chipped blue mug by the sink. I thought of my wall map with America bold and Europe pale to the side, a reminder that the world is wide, but my life is here. I am not cruel. I am a pilot and a woman who plans. I left them with water, food, and shade. I left them with a runway that a ranger still checks once a month. I left them with a story the sun would write on them one day at a time. I did not watch them from the sky for long. The plan was not a show. I turned north to a small city field, paid $310 for fuel, and parked in a corner of the ramp. My hands shook for the first time when I set the brake. I let the shake pass, the way heat passes at dusk. Mom called 3 times. I let it ring. She sent a message that said, "Please call, darling." I read it and put the phone face down. Teaching is not loud. It is steady. I logged the flight, drank water, and sat until my breath felt right again. Most of what I know about their first days I learned later, from the ranger's short report, and from the way Michael's voice changed when he told me parts of it on the phone. On day 1, they pulled the jugs into the shade of the wing and tied the long cloth to the rusted pole at the edge of the strip. They sorted the food into piles the way I hoped they would. Quick calories for morning, slow food for night. They tried the small stove and cheered when the flame caught. That first night, the heat slipped away, and the dark felt large. Coyotes called far out, and the stars looked close enough to touch. The desert is not empty. It is simply wide. By day 3, they understood water in a new way. They set rules. A cup at sunrise. A cup at noon. A cup when the sun fell. They kept the lids tight and set the jugs in the small triangle of shade that moved with the day. They put wet cloths on their necks and shared without fighting. Michael stopped joking. Sophia stopped filming. They learned that a hat is worth more than a story when the sun is a white coin. At night, the air cooled so fast their teeth clicked. They took turns waking to check for lights on the horizon. There were none. A week in, they built a little camp against the wind. They found old pallets near the fence and propped them up to make a wall. They moved the boxes there and stacked stones like a low ring. They walked the length of the runway at first light, hoping for a road, but the sand kept its secrets. They tried a signal fire with dry brush. Smoke rose, but no one saw it. A hawk did, and it watched them from a broken post like a judge in a small court. Their voices softened. They said please and thank you. They said I'm sorry more than once, and the words did not bounce off anything. They went into the air and stayed there. While they learned, I kept the jet ready. I flew short runs to New York and Denver for work and brought the plane back to Phoenix between trips. I paid a hangar fee of $680 and bought filters for $95. I kept the golden card locked up and used my backup account, which held $15,000 that felt like breath I could save for later. In the evenings, I sat in the little office at the field and stared at the map on the wall. America under my finger. Europe is a quiet gray to the side. Mom left voicemails that were first sharp, then soft, then quiet. I did not answer. I was waiting for time to do its part. By the third week, they had a rhythm. Morning shade. Slow work. A rest at noon. A walk at dusk. They counted bottles and made marks on the pole with a rock. One night, a thin storm walked through with a small wind that rattled the pallets but left a little cool air behind. They slept well and said it was the best night yet. On day 25, a survey plane traced a clean line in the sky. Michael and Sophia ran to the middle of the runway and waved the cloth. The plane dipped a wing, a tiny nod. The desert held its breath. Help came on day 29. A ranger truck rolled in from the far end and stopped in a low cloud of dust. The ranger had a sunburned nose and a kind voice. He offered water first, then words. They rode out with him on rough dirt, and the runway sank back into heat and quiet. I heard about it from a radio call that the office patched through. Later, I saw the rescue fee for $1,600. It came to my email in clean black lines, due in 30 days. I looked at the amount and let out a slow breath. I forwarded it to Michael with no note. An hour later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, his voice had edges I did not know. I'll pay it, he said. I get it. I'm sorry. That night, I drove past our brick house but did not stop. The porch leaned the same way, and the kitchen window held the same orange light. I parked by the field and sat under the wing of my jet as the sky went dark. The air smelled like hot dust and cooled metal. I was tired, but a deep kind of peace sat with me. The desert had done what I could not do with talks or tears. It had shown value in a plain way. Water is wealth. Shade is grace. Love is a thing you do with care, not a card you take. In the United States of America, there are many roads. That old runway is not one of them. It is a mirror. I had held it up, and we had all seen who we were. Tomorrow, I will choose my road. I flew back to Phoenix and parked the jet in its hangar, the metal still warm from the long sun. I finished the log entry, checked the tie-downs, and stood in the hush that follows a hard choice. My phone lit with missed calls from Mom and a short text from Michael. We're out. I let the screen go dark. On the drive into town, I passed our small brick house on Pine Street. The porch still leaned left. The kitchen window still caught the orange light like a kept promise. I did not stop. I turned toward the airport hotel, slept 4 hours, woke at dawn, and felt something inside me click into place, like a latch that had waited years to be shut. 2 days later, I made an offer on a small adobe house near Santa Fe, still in America, tucked against a low hillside with a cottonwood out front. The place had a tin roof, a deep porch, and a front room wide enough for a map wall. The price was $320,000. I put down $75,000 from money I had saved with long flights and careful work. The mortgage felt less like a burden and more like a rooted wing. I paid $2,400 for a used leather sofa and $1,200 for a scratched oak table that I sanded smooth over a quiet weekend. I bought a secondhand bed for $600 and a simple rug for $250, rolled it out, and watched the room stop echoing. The lawyer's work came next. My friend Grace drew up strict rules for my accounts and the company that holds the jet. No more family access. No more keys on a hook by a door that anyone could open. We set spending alerts at $100, moved charter payments to a new business account, and wrote a clear list of trustees who would not bend. The golden card could only be used for fuel, maintenance, and repairs with my signature on file. I paid Grace £900 because she worked fast and she cared, and because she looked at me and said, "You're the captain here." I bought a steel safe for $380, bolted it to the floor, and locked the card inside. I changed the code on my locker to a number no one would guess. The date I first soloed. I still fly. In the weeks after the rescue, I took steady trips over America, Phoenix to Denver, Dallas to New York, Santa Fe to San Diego, and back. I woke before dawn, checked the weather, ran my hand along the leading edge, and let first light find the wings. A woman named Olivia booked me to take a small team to a meeting in Chicago. She paid the invoice the same day and wrote, "The landing was art." Daniel sent checklists and jokes and once sent $50 with a note, "Buy a plant." I did. A small fig stands in the corner now and turns its leaves toward morning. The calls from home came in waves. The first week, Michael left voice notes that sounded shaky and proud at once. He paid the $4,600 rescue fee himself and cut up 2 extra cards he did not need. He said he was sorry for the line about me being the bank. He said he was selling a gold watch he never wore and starting a budget. I thanked him and did not invite more. Mom's messages were harder. She said families help each other. She said I did not understand how hard life can be. I wrote back when my words were calm. I will help with what I choose to help. I will not be taken from. She sent a single reply. Okay. Moving in became a ritual I could hold. I spent $280 on tools and $140 on white paint and worked on one wall at a time. I found a secondhand piano for $900 and learned 2 simple songs that sounded brave in the empty room. I bought 3 blue mugs for $12 each to replace the chipped one I left behind. On weekends, I took the jet up alone, traced a lazy loop over the desert, then dropped back into Santa Fe, light and easy, like a hand placed gently on a shoulder. I met my neighbor Henry, who grows tomatoes and names them, and his wife Nora, who brings me mail when I forget to check the box. One mild evening, we sat on my porch and split a pie that cost $16. We ate in quiet and watched the sky go from copper to blue. I learned to plan joy the way I plan fuel. Every month, I set aside $200 for simple things: a ticket to a small theater, a stack of used books, a dinner with friends where we split the bill with easy smiles because we can. I kept one shelf for Europe travel guides as a quiet dream, a reminder of how wide the world is, but I stayed here. This story is about America, and my work is here, and my heart is too. I started a small fund for girls who want to learn to fly. The first scholarship was $1,000 and went to a teenager named Lila who loves checklists and clouds. When she texted me, I passed my first written. I cried in the kitchen and laughed at the same time. One afternoon, out of habit, I drove back to Phoenix and parked near the little brick house. I did not go in. I walked the block and looked at it from across the street. A woman I did not know watered the hedge.
She waved.
I waved back. The house looked smaller than the one I carry in my mind. That was the last time I needed to see it up close. On the way home, I stopped at the field and ran my hand along the jet's fuselage. "We're okay," I said. Machines like truth. They answer by doing exactly what they are built to do. Later, Mom asked to meet. We chose a diner halfway between Phoenix and Santa Fe, the kind with chrome edges and pie under glass. She wore a blue dress I knew from church days and held my hands for a long time. She cried, then she laughed, then she apologized for the card. She said she had been scared about money and wanted my brother to have one pure thing. I listened. I told her I understood fear. I told her I would pay for what I choose and nothing I do not choose. We split the check, $28, and hugged in the parking lot. When she let go, I felt lighter but not empty, the way you feel after setting a heavy bag down and finding your balance again. Evenings at the Adobe house are a kind of soft flight. I cook simple food, sweep the porch, and watch the light walk up the hill. The map wall holds America in bold lines, with a small corner for Europe like a folded postcard. I keep the jet ready. Hangar fees $680, filters $95, oil checks on schedule. I keep myself ready, too. Early nights, clear lists, a little music on the piano before bed. When the wind shifts, the roof hums like a low engine, and I feel steady, as if the whole house knows how to lift and how to land. When people ask about my family now, I tell the truth in plain words. I gave them food and water when they needed it. I gave them time to think. Then I gave myself a new start. I am a woman who pilots her own sky. I learned that love without limits turns into a wallet. Now my love has limits, and my sky is wide. Each night, I lock the golden card in the safe, turn the dial, and hear the soft click that means I kept a promise to myself. I switch off the lamp, breathe, and sleep. In the morning, the horizon opens like a clean runway, and I take it, nose up, heart steady, heading set to my own true north.